There is a kind of tired that has nothing to do with how much sleep you got. It's the tired that comes from spending hours, days, sometimes years in close proximity to energy that takes more than it gives. And the most frustrating part is that you cannot always just walk away from it. Sometimes the situation requires you to stay, to show up, to function normally inside an environment that is anything but. And if you've ever found yourself completely drained, not by the work itself, but by the energy surrounding it, this episode is for you. And that is what we are talking about today. I'm Karen, and this is The Rewrite, a podcast about finding the courage to pursue the life you already know you're meant to live. If you're new here, welcome. Every episode is a standalone conversation about what keeps capable people from building a life on purpose and what it actually takes to move forward. It doesn't matter where you are in this work right now. Today, we're going to get specific about one of the most overlooked threats to everything you're trying to build. Not the obvious obstacles or the external circumstances, but the subtle daily drain that most people simply learn to live with. Here's what I've noticed about people who are genuinely trying to build something meaningful. Most of the people who are struggling to build the life they're meant to live aren't struggling because of a lack of vision or a lack of work ethic. They're struggling because their energy is being consistently depleted by things that have nothing to do with their purpose. And one of the biggest sources of that depletion is other people. Not in an obvious way. Often it's quiet, accumulative, the kind of drain you don't fully notice until you sit down to do something that matters and then realize there's nothing left. Toxic energy doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it looks like someone who complains constantly, who finds a problem in every solution, who operates from a place of competition or insecurity in a way that makes every interaction feel like a transaction. Sometimes it's subtler than that. It's a heaviness you feel after certain conversations, a tightness in your chest when certain names appear on your phone, and inexplicable exhaustion after spending time in certain environments. Your nervous system knows. It registers misaligned energy before your conscious mind has fully processed it. And when you learn to trust that signal rather than talk yourself out of it, everything changes. Now, here is where it gets complicated. Because this would be a much simpler conversation if toxic energy only showed up in people you could easily walk away from. But that's not how it always works. Sometimes the energy that drains you belongs to someone who, for whatever reason, you need to be around because you are not yet in a position to fully remove yourself from the situation without significant consequences. Whether it's a workplace, a family dynamic, or even a roommate, the physical proximity is not always something you can immediately change. And that is exactly where most advice about toxic energy falls short. It tells you to walk away, to set a boundary, to choose yourself, all of which are true, but none of which account for the reality of the situation that is not that simple yet. And sometimes the most difficult version of this is that it belongs to someone you genuinely care about, someone you have history with, someone who has been a real presence in your life, but whose behavior is draining you even as the relationship itself still holds meaning. And here is something most people are too uncomfortable to admit. Behaviors are contagious, not just the good ones, the toxic ones too. When you spend enough time around someone or people who complains constantly, who operates from negativity or competition or bitterness, you start to notice those same patterns showing up in yourself. I have caught myself there many times, not proud of it, but it happened. And the moment I recognized it, I understood something important. The environment you stay in long enough starts to shape you, whether you intend it to or not. That is another cost of allowing toxic energy to stay close that most people never talk about. It doesn't always drain you, it can quietly begin to change you. So let's talk about what you actually do when walking away is not immediately an option. And I'll start by saying that I consider myself a pretty patient person. I don't go looking for conflict. I genuinely enjoy people and I tend to give a lot of grace before I reach the point where something becomes a problem for me. I've always been more sensitive to the energy around me than I sometimes let on. So when I feel the energy in a space that doesn't match the kind of environment I need to function well, something in me registers it clearly. And I have had seasons where I was in close proximity to energy that consistently did not match, not by choice, but because the circumstances required my presence. And what I discovered in those seasons is that you cannot always control your physical environment, but you have far more control over your internal one, more than you realize. The work isn't always about removing yourself from the situation. Sometimes the work is about becoming so clear on what you're building and why it matters that the noise around you loses its ability to get inside you. Now, that doesn't mean you stop feeling it. I still feel it, but there is a difference between feeling something and letting it take up residence in you. And learning to close that door, to feel it and release it rather than absorb it, is one of the most important skills you will develop in this season of building. Let me give you something concrete for the situations where you cannot simply walk away. First, name what you're dealing with accurately. Not to be dramatic about it or build a case, but because clarity is the beginning of every solution. Is this person consistently negative? Competitive in a way that undermines others? Do they operate from insecurity in a way that creates tension in every interaction? Name it. Not out loud, not to others, but to yourself, because you cannot protect yourself from something you have been pretending is not there. Second, limit your exposure where you can. Even in situations where full separation is not possible, there is almost always room to reduce contact, to keep interactions professional and purposeful rather than personal and open ended, to stop giving more access than the situation actually requires. Third, protect your recharge time fiercely, and I cannot emphasize this enough. If you know certain environments are going to cost you energy, build the recovery time into your schedule intentionally, not as an afterthought, but rather as a non negotiable. Because the goal is not just to survive the draining environment, the goal is to come out of it with enough left to keep building what matters. And fourth, keep your eyes on what you're building. This one sounds simple, yet it's not always that simple. But when you're grounded in your purpose, when you know clearly what you're working toward and why it matters, it becomes harder for other people's energy to pull you completely off course. Your purpose becomes your anchor, and an anchor keeps you steady even when the water around you is not. Now, I want to reframe how you think about protecting your peace. Because for a lot of people, especially people who care deeply about others, protecting their energy feels selfish. It's not. It's one of the most responsible things you can do. Think about what you're building. The podcast you're listening to right now exists because I've decided my purpose was worth protecting the energy it requires. Every episode, every piece of content, every conversation that reaches someone who needs it is only possible because I choose to guard what fuels it. Your gifts require energy to operate. Your calling requires fuel to pursue. And your peace is not a luxury you get to enjoy once you have built something significant. Your gifts were given to you on purpose. But aside from that anointing, your energy is the resource that makes acting on them possible in the first place. So protect it like everything depends on it, because everything does. So before the next episode, here's what I want you to do. Think about the primary source of the energy drain in your life right now. Not something vague. The specific thing, the person, the environment, the pattern that is consistently costing you more than it's giving back. Now write down your honest answer to this question. What is one boundary, one limit, or one change I can make this week to reduce how much of my energy this is taking from me? It doesn't have to solve everything. Just one intentional step toward protecting what you're building. That is where the reconstruction begins. Not with a grand gesture, but with a quiet, deliberate decision to stop letting what drains you have unlimited access to what fuels you. Thank you so much for being here with me today. This phase of the conversation is one I've been looking forward to because the work of looking inward As necessary as it is, asks a lot out of you. It requires you to sit with uncomfortable things, to look at patterns and beliefs and relationships that are not easy to examine. This phase moves forward, and you have done the work that earns the right to move forward. So if this episode landed for you, drop it in the comments and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Every share puts this conversation in front of someone who is ready for it. Make sure you're subscribed. New episodes drop every week, and where we're going next continues to build on everything we've uncovered together. And in spite of what is going on in this world, it is still a great time to be alive because we still get to choose, and that is a beautiful gift. I'm Karen, and this is The Rewrite, because your story isn't finished yet.